Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Spider-Geddon miniseries as we take a look at Spider-Geddon number 3. So, last time on Spider-Geddon, the Inheritors, a family of interdimensional vampires who were imprisoned on Earth 3145, managed to find a means of escape by transferring their minds into new clone bodies that they had grown thanks to the cloning tech of one Dr. Otto Octavius, who had managed to replicate their own cloning tech in an attempt to make himself immortal. Sadly, while a handful of Spideys from across the multiverse tried to warn Otto of this, it was too little too late and the Inheritors managed to escape, killing at least 2 Spideys on their way and stealing a handful of dimensional watches. As such, the team of Spideys wound up retreating back to their base on Earth 001, and a split wound up forming between the groups of Spideys on how to best deal with the Inheritors, with one side, led by Miles Morales, believing that they need to find a way to stop the Inheritors once again and potentially trap them, while the other side, led by Otto Octavius, believed that they just needed to kill them all permanently. And as a result, the Spider-Army wound up getting split down the middle, with Miles leading one side, Otto leading the other. As such, Karn, not knowing which side would yield the best results, just gave everyone their own dimensional watches and told them to do whatever they wanted, and so Miles and Otto went off to go and gather their own recruits of their armies, with Otto even reclaiming the mantle of the superior Spider-Man since, hey, this is a war of spiders. Unfortunately, though, after both Spider-Armies leave, Verna of the Inheritors arrives in Loomworld and ends up killing Karn because, well, I guess precautionary measures. I still find it weird, but whatever. And so they're now down to Master Weaver. And as such from there, we are now seeing the Spider-Armies as they start kind of forming up their ranks, which is where today's issue begins, as we see Miles and Otto as they are gathering more Spideys for their army. On Otto's side, we see him fresh from recruiting the Insomniac Spider-Man and Spider-Geddon number 0, as both of them go to the world of the Japanese Spider-Man, Takuya Yamashiro, as he's in the middle of a giant robot fight with a monster, with both of them teleporting into the head of Leopard and just tell him, go for the killing blow, it'll make things a lot quicker, which Takuya agrees to, though somewhat reluctantly, because even he admits it's dishonorable and kind of makes the fight boring. But it makes it go quick, so whatever. And in the meantime, Miles is in the world of Spider-Man India to recruit Pavitr Prabhakar because they believe he'll need his expertise. And what I like there is that when Miles goes to recruit Pavitr, he's actually helping Pavitr stop a group of muggers from escaping. You know, which I dig. I like that. It's kind of fun. It's nice when in the middle of all this, the Spideys just help each other out. In that case, it's kind of like when the Spider-Army went to go recruit Peter in the original Spider-Verse, they helped him stop a gang of muggers where they told him, oh, hey, by the way, these monsters from across the multiverse are trying to kill us, so we need your help. So, again, I dig that. It's kind of nice. But either way, yeah, the armies begin forming and both have their own plans in mind. On the one side, we have Miles, and the Spideys he currently has on his team are, and I apologize if I'm going for the book, I just find this easier at this point. On Miles' side, he has Spider-Ham, Spider-Man and Spinneret from the Renew Your Vows universe, Spider-Ben and Spider-Pete from Edge of Spider-Geddon number 3, Penny Parker, aka Spider, and Silk, who is just as keen to stop the Inheritors as the last time we saw them. Though, sadly, on Miles' side, there's a bit of disarray among the team because, well, some of them do believe that they need the Peter Parker of Earth 616, since he was the front runner in the original Spider-Verse. Though Miles lets them know that, sadly, Peter's not available, since, like I said when we talked about the last issue, Peter was kind of dealing with his own shit in the tie-ins as Moreland went to go duke it out with him, so sadly he's preoccupied, so the army has to kind of make do with what they've got. As such, they do have a handful of strategies in mind to take down the Inheritors, one of which is actually taking place in another set of tie-ins called Spider-Girls, wherein Mayday Parker, Anya Corazon, and Annie Mae Parker from the Renew Your Vows universe are trying to gather intel on the Inheritors and find the best way to kind of take them down. In the meantime, the main team is going to try and go to the new U building and potentially take down the building and stop any attempts at making cloning vats, so the Inheritors will be kind of shot in the knees and not be able to make more clone bodies. In the meantime, though, with Otto's team, we see that he's also gathered his own team of Spideys, which in this case includes, again, I'm just trying to be sure I get everybody because Again, this is easier. In this case, his team includes Spider-Norman from Edge of Spider-Geddon number 4, the Web-Slinger, who you may remember from the previous Spider-Verse as one of the Spideys that Miles and Drake Bell Spider-Man recruited, which, yeah, he's the Cowboy Spider-Man. Octavia Otto, obviously. Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk, and another Spider-Man who we're not going to learn anything about, whose backstory we're not going to talk about until we get to the tie-ins. This one, well, he's called Spiders-Man, and the reason why he's called Spiders-Man is because he is a hive mind of radioactive spiders who all believe they're the Peter Parker of their world. I'll let you know how that happened in the first place. But yeah, point is, while he may be a bunch of spiders, there's still some of Peter Parker in there. So of course the spiders wound up becoming the Spider-Man of their world. The team is forming, and essentially pretty much Otto's just letting them all know, about giving them all a rallying speech about how they all are like-minded, how they know how they have to take down the Inheritors, and that no one can stand in their way. And of course, everyone's in agreement on that. Everyone's ready just to do what they believe is necessary. And even in the midst of all that, Spider-Norman is kind of ready to get this all over with, like thinking, why don't we just go in there right now? And while Otto agrees with his sentiment, he does tell him to kind of rein it in a little, because after all, Otto's the one calling the shots here, so Norman kind of needs to know his place a little. On top of that, there are still some things that their team still needs to worry about. Namely, they got to make sure the Inheritors stay neutered. Just as Miles and his team want to take out the Inheritors' cloning vats, basically Otto and his team want to make sure that the Inheritors don't get Solus back, because after all, Solus has not been revived. After all, after he died in Spider-Verse, the essence of what he was contained in a crystal. And unfortunately for the Inheritors, while they managed to transfer their minds out of Earth 3145, that's all they transported, their minds. Some of their personal effects are still trapped on Earth 3145, one of which is the crystal containing Solus's essence, meaning they cannot let that fall into his hands. So as a result, Otto has sent his own away team to go and deal with that, which is also in another tie-in, which we'll talk about later. Point is, both sides of the Spider-Army have sent out their own away teams to do some things, and basically Otto believes that they need to kind of figure out a way to ensure that the Inheritors don't get a leg up on them. And Octavia believes that she knows someone that can help, as she unveils to this side of the Spider-Army, Ben Reilly, aka the Scarlet Spider, who Otto is not exactly happy to see, especially since Otto is not okay with Ben being here at all, since, as I should probably remind you, when Kane suggested that Ben Reilly join the army, Otto just scoffed it off because as I mentioned, in the clone conspiracy, Ben was the big bad. And like I said, he's still kind of a little crazy up here. So maybe, just maybe, it shouldn't be a good idea to include the crazy guy on their team. Although Ben kind of counters that logic by stating that shouldn't Otto understand what it's like to be a madman who's trying to get a second chance at life? And yeah, Otto kind of concedes to that and decides, okay, fine, maybe your expertise will be useful. Because yeah, like I said, Ben was the one that was originally behind the new U technology, so he knows how all that stuff works. So he'll probably be an invaluable asset. So Otto does reluctantly allow him to join his side of the army. However, before they can really form a full strategy, Otto ends up getting a call from Miles, because, well, Miles and his team are getting ready to go and blow the new U building to try and neuter the Inheritors from utilizing the cloning tech. And Miles is calling Otto kind of as a courtesy call. The thing is, while both sides of the Spider-Army want to solve this problem with the Inheritors via different means, both sides also freely admit they're both working towards the same goal, stopping the Inheritors. And much like with the original Spider-Verse, both sides recognize that the Inheritors are a threat to all Spideys from across the multiverse. So while they are not going to directly work with each other, they're also not going to do anything to get in each other's way, which, in a way, I find a little confusing, especially since there is some clear animosity between both sides, but in another way, it's kind of refreshing. I'm not even kidding. I kind of like the fact that while both sides do not see eye to eye, they both clearly recognize these guys are the bigger threat, and if we're just going to if we keep trying to just fight amongst ourselves, we're not going to make any progress in fighting them. So basically, they just give each other a wide berth whenever possible, and neither side and both sides pretty much try to make sure they don't get in either side's way. So, well, because ultimately, if one of them happens to win, good on them. The inheritors are stopped. Although, again, I feel like Miles' side would at the very least be more willing to clash with Otto's side. But you know what? Whatever. Again, better to fight the bigger threat than fight amongst themselves. So, whatever. But anyway, getting back on topic. Miles is pretty much just letting Otto know about how he and his team are going to go attack the new U building. And Otto thinks that that's a stupid plan. He thinks that they're not... Yeah. He thinks that Miles' team is not nearly prepared enough and that they need to wait. But Miles is really not taking any of Otto's advice. In fact, the only reason he called him was more of a courtesy call to see if he wanted in on this. And since... and Miles is pretty much taking Otto's reaction as a no, so Miles just tells him, okay, fine, just stay in your base or whatever, we're gonna go and save the world, bye. And so they leave, and Otto, just kind of angry, decides, fine, let them go and die, which even the other assorted Spideys there are like, dude, are you just gonna go let them do that? And Otto's like, well, why not? Well, why not? If they want to go die, then so be it, it's not our problem. So, yeah, Otto's still kind of a bastard. Though thankfully not a complete bastard, which we'll see in a minute. In the meantime, back at the New U building, we see that, yeah, Genix's labors have indeed bore fruit, as he has thankfully managed to recreate Solus's body. Though, sadly, it's still an empty vessel. After all, the inheritors still need his essence, his consciousness, to actually give life to the thing. Otherwise, it's just a drooling mass of flesh and bone and muscle. So... yeah, basically. So, yeah, they're still kind of a little handicapped. In the meantime, and Genix, sadly, is not getting the full hang of the new U-Tech, as it's a little bit out of his purview, which I find a little odd, considering that he had an entire universe which was honestly very technologically advanced. But whatever, I guess this technology is a little outside of his expertise. In the meantime, though, as the inheritors are discussing all this in the vents above, Spider-Ham is watching them and is just pretty much playing spot and is pretty much just gathering intel. As such, once he feels he's gotten enough, he ends up leaving the room and goes to another area in the new U building where Miles and his side of the Spider-Army are getting ready to blow the place up, with Ham letting Miles know, okay, they got everything they need. Okay, they've gotten his body ready, but they don't have it. They've gotten Solus's body ready, but they don't have his consciousness. So we can still make a clear shot at this. As such, after expertly placing detonation charges on key structural points across the building, which Cindy's able to confirm, as apparently she did work at New U before, the whole clone conspiracy thing, Miles tells everyone, okay, I want you to open a portal before I blow this place up, as Miles has the detonator, as he wants to jump through the portal just as he hits the button, because they have to time it just right, and so maybe they can end this before anything becomes a problem. Unfortunately, the Spiders also kind of forgot one little thing about the inheritors, most likely because they've been out of practice for so long. The inheritors can smell spider totems. So before Miles even gets a chance to even press the button, Bricks and Bora show up and immediately Bora manages to slash at Miles' arm, causing him to drop the detonator, with Bricks using his whip to break the detonator apart before Miles can get a chance at it. And from there, the inheritors just end up kind of zeroing in on the room and attacking the Spideys, and as such, yeah, it's kind of turning into a slaughterfest. As one by one, the Spideys are getting overwhelmed by their power, and some of them even are getting directly targeted by the Inheritors, who immediately start trying to siphon out their life forces, including Miles and the Renew Your Vow Spider-Man. As such, with their options kind of dwindling, Miles quickly realizes, shit, we are not making out of this, are we? So he decides to kind of go for Plan B, as he asks Penny to set off the detonators, which Penny at first is a little against, because if she does that, then they'll be dying along with the Inheritors. But really, at this point, it's one of those we have nothing to lose thing. We're probably going to die anyway, we might as well try dying taking these guys out with us. As such, Penny reluctantly sets her Spider-Mech to start the countdown, but before everything goes boom, a giant sword bursts right through the side of the building. Sword vigor! And from that sword comes Otto's Spider-Army, who immediately come in and give Miles' team some assistance as they immediately start webbing up the Inheritors and taking them out. out, which Miles and his crew are happy to do this. With thankfully nobody dying as they didn't have their life forces completely sucked out. And while thanks are shared all around, Miles, of course, it turns out that this is actually part of Otto's plan, because it turns out Otto decided that yes, he was going to aid Miles and his team, but he was also going to take advantage of their stupidity. Yeah, like I said, Otto did know that their team was probably going to fail, but he did at least believe that what Miles and his team were doing would at least give him a good distraction, as on the upper floors of the New U building, Otto, Ben, and Spider-Norman are essentially bricking their technology, and Otto is taking this opportunity to scan Stolas' body to see if he can find any potential weaknesses in it. Of course, as this is all going on, Spider-Norman is advocating for using Sword Vigor to just take out this entire section of the building, which Otto isn't entirely against, but for now they need to gather some intel before they actually make any moves. Unfortunately, before they can gather enough intel, the Inheritors wind up coming back to the room, specifically Brix and Bora, as they tell Otto to get away from their father. As such, Otto sadly has to abandon ship as he and the other Spideys make a run for it. As such, all the assembled spider people at New U, both on Otto and Miles' side, immediately go on board Leopardin, and unfortunately the Inheritors jump out after them and start climbing the robot trying to get inside. And sadly, well, Takuya can't use Sword Vigor twice because it needs to recharge. As such, the best bet is just to cut and run. As such, he transports Leopard into his jet form and then flies away, just dropping the Inheritors, with Deimos just angrily shaking his fist as they fly away. It's kind of amusing. But either way, yep, the Spiders may not have taken down the Inheritors this day, but both sides did gather some valuable intel. They did gather some valuable intel, and they did at least somewhat neuter the Inheritors, as they were able to break their cloning technology, and thankfully Miles and Otto's teams were able to gather some valuable intel regarding the Inheritors and Solus, which both sides do end up sharing with one another, which I dig. I like that. It's not, again, I like that. It once again goes into the whole both sides may not be with each other, but they're not against each other either. I like that, so I dig it. But in the meantime, as all the resorted spider people are just kind of licking their wounds, which even leads to a nice scene where Spinneret is comforting Spider Pete, which I like, since after all, Spinneret is a mother, and Spider Pete's a 13-year-old Peter Parker who's still probably a little nervous about being a part of all this, so I kind of like that. It's kind of tender. But anyway, as this is all going on, Spider-Norman takes one of the spider people aside, specifically Spider's man. As it turns out, Norman's kind of having his own ideas on how to take out the Inheritors, which kind of feeds back into what we saw in Edge of Spider-Geddon number 4, as Norman is fully aware of all the intricacies of the multiverse, since his damaged cosmic cube allowed him to view into untold parallel universes, and about how he was able to view, and through it he was even able to see the structure of the web of life and destiny. And the thing is about Norman, he believes that if the Spider-Armies fail here, then the Inheritors are not just going to stop at Earth 616. After all, in the previous Spider-Verse event, we saw that the Inheritors, in the time that they were in possession of the Master Weaver and the Web of Life and Destiny, were conquering universes. In fact, a whole thing with Loom World was that it was a mishmash of all the different societies and worlds from all these different universes they had conquered. Hell, in Spider-Verse, Genix ruled an entire world and twisted it into his image. So, I do believe that so, in a way, I can kind of see the root of Norman's fears here, because after all, if the Inheritors win here, they are probably going to continue right where they left off. Which is where Norman's plan comes in, because after all, he doesn't want the Inheritors going to his world, and he doubts that Spider's man would want the Inheritors going to his. So Norman has a proposition. Maybe, just maybe, they could wall the Inheritors off onto Earth 616, to sacrifice one universe for the sake of all the others. Of course, Spider's man says that if they do that, it would mean that everybody on this world would be doomed, and the assembled spiders here would be sentenced to death. As it would be like signing their own death warrants. But Norman's response? That's what we call acceptable losses. And the fact that you're even still listening to this conversation shows me that you're intrigued. So maybe we should keep this conversation to ourselves for now. And that's where the comic ends. So, yeah. My thoughts on this issue? It's an intermediary issue, I'll say that much. It really feels like this is kind of a lull in the story. There are major plot developments overall in this issue, but for the most part, it's just the Spider-Armies just kind of doing their own thing. First off, I will say this. I do genuinely still like that both sides of the Spider-Army are not trying to get in each other's way. Again, it does feel somewhat strange considering that the reason for the split was essentially a debate on morality, as like I said, one side wants to stop the Inheritors without killing them, and the other side just wants to straight up murk them. But at the very least, and again, this is one of those things I'm a little iffy on. I find it interesting that neither army is trying to get in each other's way. They both know they are working towards the same goal, even if they're taking different routes to get there. And as a result, while they aren't working directly with each other, they're also not doing anything to stop one another, and in some cases, they act cordial. Like I said, Miles contacted Otto to let him know if he wanted in on their mission to attack the new U building. And what I like is that while both Spider-Armies are kind of talking strategy and figuring out what to do next, they do the leaders of both sides explicitly state, don't interfere with the other guys. We're all working towards the same goal here, and while we may all disagree, if one of us happens to succeed, good. We got what we wanted. So I like that. And I like that. Again, it is kind of iffy, especially since, like I said, the split with the Spider-Army is an issue of morality, but I kind of like it when the idea is that they're both working towards a higher goal. Like, they both recognize that fighting each other is not going to get them any closer to what either wants. And after all, both sides want to see the Inheritors beaten. So both sides just know that while they may not be seeing eye to eye here, they at least recognize who the bigger threat is and redirect their energy towards fighting them instead. I dig that. And what I like is that again to showcase that both sides are at least trying to be cordial, they help each other out. Otto's team goes in to help Miles and his team get out of the new U building while doing their own thing in there. And likewise, when Miles is saved by them, he starts sharing intel with Otto and co. because he believes that it could help both armies out. I like that. It's actually some legitimately good stuff. Again, it's one of those things that you can be iffy on because again, it feels like maybe Miles and his team should maybe be butting heads a little bit more with Otto and his crew, since Otto's side is the one advocating for straight up killing the Inheritors. But at the very least, I also at least like there is some tactical work going on there, and as both the leaders of both sides realize, we got to focus on the bigger threat here. We can deal with that. We can deal with any objections we have with their methods later. I like that. It's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. Pretty good. On top of that, like I said, still cool to see all these different Spider people in one place. Like with Spider-Verse, it's just fun. And like with Spider-Verse, it's nice to see some new faces thrown into the mix. Of course, we got our share of familiar ones, like with Penny Parker, Silk, the Web Slinger, and so on. But there are still some new faces that we hadn't seen in the previous Spider-Verse event. Of course, obvious examples are Spider-Pete and Spider-Ben, who were established in Edge of Spider-Geddon #3. But what I do like here is that we see the Renew Your Vows versions of Spider-Man and Mary Jane, aka Spinneret, now being a part of the team. And what's even better, neither of them are wearing black. Yeah, kind of a weird thing that I realized when thinking this issue over. But the previous times that Peter and Mary Jane took part in interdimensional events, they were both wearing their black suits, as the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man was wearing the black costume when he took part in Spider-Verse, and then during Venomverse, when Mary Jane got pulled away into that, she was bonded with a symbiote. So now we're actually seeing them in their regular superhero costumes. I dig it. It's cool. It's cool, and I kind of find that amusing. But either way, yeah, it's cool seeing them there. And because we see them now be a part of this, we get more expansion on their characters. I mean, okay, Renew Your Vows, Peter and Mary Jane, we already saw their characters be expanded on as the Renew Your Vows universe was an ongoing thing, so we saw more of that. But at the very least, we see more with Petey and Spider-Ben. We see some more stuff with Penny, which I like. What I like is that she's very determined to take down the Inheritors because, well, as we saw in Edge of Spider-Geddon #2, she recently lost her aunt, so she's not exactly willing to lose her friends to the Inheritors again. So I like that. I like seeing that, and of course, we get some more expansion with other characters. As I mentioned, the Web Slinger was essentially a one-off, kind of sort of background Spider-Man in Spider-Verse. We only really saw him in, like, one shot in the original Spider-Verse, and it was mostly just kind of there to exemplify how insane Miles and Drake Bell Spidey's mission was to gather more Spideys for the army. So, seeing him now here, kind of taking Otto's side, is rather intriguing, and seeing further a setup, and seeing the addition of other Spideys in this, including Spiders-Man and Spider-Norman, definitely really is a tone setter, because, yeah, Spiders-Man, despite having a hive mind of Peter Parker across all these millions of spiders, is not well. He talks about eating people. And he always has very specific denial when talking about eating people, saying that, oh, I wouldn't eat people. By the way, how would the Inheritors taste? Asking for a friend. It's very clear that Spiders-Man is not well, which is probably why Spider-Norman even talks to him at the end, which I'll get to in a minute, but it's very disturbing, to say the least. Although I also do like some bits between Otto and Ben Reilly, because again, I do like the whole. Which I will say this: it is supposed to be kind of inconsistent with Ben Reilly's character, as, like I said, prior to Spider-Geddon, he did kind of go off the deep end again in his own solo book. But at the very least, I'll give it a pass here, because I like seeing good guys be good. And as I mentioned, writers don't really like Ben Reilly, so I'm kind of nice to throw him a bone right now and have him actually say, look, I may not be okay up here, but I want to do good and I want to try and get back to being a proper superhero, which I like that. And I even like that he kind of convinces Otto to give him a chance, considering Otto's own history as a supervillain, as he now is trying to take the steps back to being a superhero. I like that. It actually is some legitimately good character stuff. And of course, when it comes down to the plot progression, like I was mentioning, we got the stuff with the Inheritors and Solas. As we see the Inheritors making progress in bringing their father back, as they now manage to reconstruct his body, they just happen to lack the essence, the soul, which is where Verna is going off to in her own dimensional journeys. And then likewise, we got the development with Spider-Norman and Spiders-Man, which, yeah, this one kind of feels like it's kind of cut from the same cloth as the whole Superior Spider-Man, Assassin Spider-Man, and Ashley Barden talking about killing the Inheritors from the original Spider-Verse storyline. But whereas that kind of sort of went nowhere in that story, this time around, this one actually adds a bit of more of a sinister undertone to the whole thing. As we established in Edge of Spider-Geddon #4, Spider-Norman is still nuts. Yes, like I said, he may be wearing the guise of Spider-Man, but underneath it all, he's still Norman Osborn. And he's just as crazy in that universe as he is in the main Marvel universe, which I kind of find odd that Otto doesn't seem to realize that, but to be fair, he just met him, so he has no idea if he is just as crazy as him, and if just as crazy as him. So odds are he probably needs to spend at least a little bit more time with him, which you can tell things are not going to go well, as they're already starting to butt heads. But what I like here is that when Spider-Norman brings up the idea of potentially cutting off Earth 616 from the rest of the multiverse so they can trap the Inheritors here, it definitely creates a sense of unease and tension, because essentially doing this would be dooming the main Marvel universe. Because, yeah, in the grander scheme of things, the remainder of the multiverse would be safe, since, after all, Earth 616, the Inheritors would be just trapped on one world, while the remainder of the multiverse would be fine. Well, the thing is, it's still an entire universe. They would be leaving an Earth full of millions of people to the Inheritors just because Norman thinks it's an acceptable sacrifice, as he calls it. And on top of that, he's willing to throw the rest of the Spideys under the bus to do it, even though doing this would essentially trap them on Earth 616 along with them, and essentially deprive those worlds of their spider people. So it definitely creates a sense of so it definitely makes you think that things are not going so well, which it makes you intrigued. It makes you want to know where things are going to go, especially since you know that with Norman Osborn, he does not make empty promises. Odds are he is going to want to act on this, and when he finally tries, it's not going to end well. So it definitely creates a sense of unease and tension in this part of the story. And the fact that he's going to Spider-Man to do it definitely kind of leaves you even more creepy, especially since, like I said, Spider-Man is clearly not all well, despite having Peter Parker's mind up here. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested in seeing where this goes, which, actually, from a tactical standpoint, it makes sense why Spider-Norman would go to Spider-Man for help, because after all, while he may have the mind of Peter Parker, his morals are somewhat looser than Peter's, as he still operates as a bunch of spiders who want to eat things. So of course, essentially this would be doing for Norman what Otto wanted to do with the Insomniac Spider-Man. Get a Spider-Man who'd be predisposed to listen to what he has to say, while still having the benefits of getting a Peter Parker on his side. Hold on. Sorry, hurt people. But as a result, so in that way, it makes sense why he would target Spider-Man, considering that he is slightly unhinged enough so that he would still have the benefits of working Norman would have the benefits of working alongside a Peter Parker, while still having one that'd be more willing to kind of do the more underhanded things to get the job done. So, yeah, it definitely is uneasy. Though I will say this does kind of clash with Spider-Man's backstory, which, again, we'll get to when we get to the tie-ins. So, otherwise, though, the rest of the story is still enjoyable. Like I said, it mostly just feels like an intermediary issue. We got some important plot developments here with the Inheritors, with the Spideys. We dropped some plot points with Spider-Norman potentially getting ready to do something underhanded and honestly kind of psychotic with cutting off the main Marvel Universe and the rest of the multiverse to trap the Inheritors. And likewise, we got hints of what was going on in the tie-ins, with hints towards to the Spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins, the Spider-Force tie-ins, and the Spider-Girls tie-ins. Just because we'll have to remind you that those are part of it, which, again, we're not going to talk about those till we actually get to them proper, so apologies on that. But either way, on the whole, the issue is still fine. The issue itself is just fine. Like I said, it's mostly just intermediary, and mostly it's just there to show the Spider-Armies just kind of doing their own thing as they are doing their own things as they're getting ready to fight the Inheritors. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. So, yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will hopefully see you on Saturday when we look at issue 4. So, till then, hope you have a good evening and take care.